I just couldn't hold it. I just couldn't keep it to myself. The feeling of shame and guilt and sadness and all those feelings.
That is the state's star witness, former au pair Juliana Peres Magalhães, breaking down as she tells the jury why she says she finally confessed against Brendan Banfield, who's now on trial, accused of an elaborate plot to kill his wife with the help of his family's au pair. So what exactly did she reveal when she was questioned? How did the defense attack her credibility? We're going to take you inside the courtroom drama, and later on, we're talking with somebody who is inside this prosecution, the former prosecutor of this case, Eric Klingen. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. All right, so we need to talk about a trial that's happening out of Virginia that is captivating the nation this week. This is one that you will definitely know. It is a suburban dad, an alleged secret affair with the family's au pair, and a double murder reportedly set up through a fetish website. We're talking about Brendan Banfield, a former IRS agent on trial for the aggravated murder of his wife, Christine, and another man, Joseph Ryan. And prosecutors say that it was a chilling, calculated plot that Banfield and the au pair Juliana Peres Magalhães allegedly created a fake online profile, lured Ryan to the home, making him think he was walking into a consensual role-playing scenario, and then prosecutors say Banfield executed them both. And the only eyewitness to the actual killings, allegedly, the au pair. She has already pled guilty in this case, pled guilty to manslaughter in a deal with the state. Although, is it a deal? You're going to hear what we're going to talk about later. And this week, by the way, she took the stand against the man she once called her lover. So we're going to take you inside the courtroom. We have the dramatic testimony, including why she says she finally decided to flip on Brendan Banfield. In fact, take a listen to this.
So what ultimately made you decide that you were going to enter this plea?
Was the thought of being the right thing to do. I guess we all deserved to know what really happened, and I just couldn't hold it. I just couldn't keep it to myself. The feeling of shame and guilt and sadness and all those feelings.
But I have to tell you, the defense, they are attacking her credibility head on, or at least trying to. They're calling her a liar who fabricated a dark story to save herself. And this is a case that has so much. Recordings, a supposedly staged crime scene, a little girl who police say was also inside the house that morning. And later, as I mentioned before, we are going to be joined by somebody who has very unique insight into the prosecution's case, a former member of the prosecution team. So stay with us on that. We'll provide a lot of context. But how did we get here? How did a quiet morning in Virginia and in this cul-de-sac end with 2 people dead and a federal employee in a legal fight for his life? The story police believe today is a world away from what they say they first saw. You go back to that day, February 24th, 2023, the first 911 call described a home invasion. Brendan Banfield, an IRS agent, told dispatchers that he had just shot an intruder who stabbed his wife. And when police arrive, the scene is chaotic. Their body cam shows them focusing on 2 people here, Banfield's terrified daughter and the family's nanny, this au pair, Juliana Peres Magalhães.
That is the guy who came here. Okay.
And then it was because they were yelling at each other. He was saying like, drop the. I'm sorry, my first English is
No, you're doing really well.
He was saying drop
The knife or the gun?
the gun. And Brendan said, no, police, don't drop the knife. And then he was saying, I'm gonna kill her. And I don't know, he started stabbing her. I think Brendan shot him.
That was her story then. A stranger, a sudden attack, a heroic shooting. But detectives, investigators, they say they saw holes. Why was there no forced entry? How did she appear so certain of that timeline? And the biggest red flag was the relationship that authorities discovered. That Brendan Banfield and his young au pair weren't just employer and employee, they were secretly romantically involved. The nanny started working for the Banfields in 2021, and by 2022, prosecutors allege he didn't just want to leave his wife, he wanted her gone permanently. He allegedly told this au pair that divorce was, quote, not an option, that he didn't want to share custody of his daughter or his money. And that is when the prosecution claims a digital plot was born, because they claim that these two, Banfield and Magalhães, used Christine's own work computer to create a fake profile on this fetish site, FetLife, posing as Christine. They reportedly spent weeks searching for the right person to lure into a violent rape fantasy role play, someone who would agree to show up at a stranger's house without ever meeting first, and they apparently found their person, 39-year-old Joseph Ryan. Through messages, Christine gave Ryan his script. Show up on February 24th. The door will be unlocked. I'll be asleep. Bring a knife. Bring restraints. Don't stop, even if I scream. Now, Ryan, seemingly believing this was all a consensual scene with adults, followed the instructions. Now, meanwhile, police claim Banfield was preparing. He allegedly bought the au pair a gun, took her to a shooting range. He apparently had soundproof windows installed. He scouted the neighborhood for security cameras, according to authorities. And on the morning of the 24th, that alleged plan got underway. According to authorities, according to police, Banfield pretended to leave for work, but waited at a nearby McDonald's. The au pair waited in a car down the street with the couple's 4-year-old daughter. And when Ryan arrived and entered the house, police claim the au pair called Banfield. He allegedly races back. Investigators believe they went in through the basement, left the little girl downstairs, and went up to the master bedroom. And what happened next comes from the au pair's new story, the one that she is now telling in court, because she claims Banfield shot Ryan in the head. And then, as Christine pleaded for her life, Banfield allegedly took Ryan's knife and stabbed his wife repeatedly. And when they realized that Ryan was apparently still moving, still alive, Banfield allegedly told the au pair to, quote, finish him, and she shot Ryan in the chest. Then they called 911. So for months, Banfield stuck to this home invasion story, right? But the investigation kept circling back. In October of 2023, the au pair was arrested, isolated in jail for a year, facing a murder charge. She finally cut a deal. Deal, maybe. She pleaded guilty to manslaughter for shooting Ryan, and in exchange, she has to provide testimony against Banfield. Now, her testimony this week is the crux of the prosecution's case. Now, Brendan Banfield, he sits in that Fairfax courtroom. He has pleaded not guilty. His defense insists that he was just a husband who was defending his home from a deranged intruder, that the au pair is a desperate liar who framed him to save herself. And he's on trial now for 4 counts of aggravated murder and 1 count of use of a firearm in the commission of a felony, potentially facing life in prison without parole. And when this trial got underway, it didn't start quietly. The weight of the entire case, as both sides have said from the start, rests on the shoulders of one person, the credibility of Magalhães, the now 25-year-old Brazilian au pair, the only apparent eyewitness to the killings, and she is testifying now for the prosecution. So to understand the stakes, you just got to listen to the opening statements, because the prosecution laid out a story of what they claim is a meticulous, cold-blooded planning.
We're here today because Brendan Banfield, the man seated behind me, killed his wife, Christine Banfield, and another man named Joseph Ryan. Those 2 individuals had no reason to know each other but for the plotting and planning of Brendan Banfield. Christine, back in 2022, was 37 years old. She was an ICU nurse working at Inova Fairfax. She was married to Brendan, who was then 38, and they had a daughter, 4-year-old Valerie. Christine worked odd shifts. She was a nurse. If any of you know what nurses' hours are, she could work nights. The schedule was irregular. It didn't occur with a 9-to-5 pattern, so regular daycare was not an option for the family. They hired an au pair, Juliana Peres Magalhães. She was from Brazil. She was 22 years old when she joined the family. She provided care while Brendan traveled for work and Christine worked her nurse's hours. The family lived in the Reston area of Fairfax County at 13230 Stablebrook Way. You'll hear that address referenced You'll see pictures of the home. You'll have the opportunity to understand what the layout of the house was, as it is very relevant to what happened in February of 2023. Taking you back, in August of 2022, Brendan began an affair with Juliana. Initially, it was just sex when Christine was at work or asleep, but eventually it developed into a relationship. They went on dates. They went to bars, clubs, dancing. They went on romantic bike rides. By the fall of 2022, they were fully in love, planning their future. On a trip to New York, Brendan revealed his desire to get rid of Christine. Divorce was not an option for him. He didn't want to lose custody of Valerie. He didn't even want to share custody of Valerie. He thought Christine was a terrible mother. He wanted her out of the picture. And he convinced young Juliana, 22 years old, not from the United States, living in his home, in love with him, that they should get rid of Christine.
But the defense came out swinging just as hard. Their target, their focus, the au pair's credibility, the investigation itself.
So the murder of Christine Banfield by Joe Ryan occurred on February 24th, 2023. The arrest of Juliana Peres Magalhães took place in October of 2023. She was held for nearly another year before she made the statements that are the full and complete support of what the Commonwealth just told you. And she did that because the Commonwealth decided that they were going to give her something certain. They were going to give her a plea of guilty to a manslaughter, which is a lesser included offense, and guaranteed time served upon her testimony here today or tomorrow or whenever that testimony is. And I would respectfully suggest that Juliana Peres Magalhães is the linchpin to all of that. Now, ultimately it's the evidence. It's not what I say. It's not what the Commonwealth says. But I say these things to you so that your ear is ready, because you're going to see a presentation of a horrible, tragic, awful event for everyone involved. And there's no disputing that. And as I said earlier, we're not disputing, you won't hear any dispute as to the relationship between Brendan Banfield and Juliana Peres Magalhães. But there's an awful lot more to look for, ladies and gentlemen, and that's what I'm asking you to do.
At the center of this entire case, this entire trial, is one witness, Juliana Peres Magalhães. Over 2 days on the stand, she gave the jury her account of a meticulously planned murder and faced a brutal cross-examination designed to shatter her credibility. First up, the prosecution. They walked her through the heart of the case, the alleged plot to lure Joseph Ryan. This was on direct examination.
Who chose Joe?
Brendan.
And did he say why he picked Joe after interacting with him on FetLife?
It was mostly because he made Brendan feel confident enough that he would be the person to play the role they needed the person to play, which means being aggressive and hold her down and come over to the house and bring stuff and all that, yeah.
And did you and the defendant ever use any other form of communication with Joe Ryan?
Yes,
And what form of communication was that?
it was a telegram.
And were you present when the Telegram account was created?
Yes,
Who created the Telegram account?
Brendan.
And how did he do that?
He used her laptop on its anonymous page, and he had her cell phone with him at the time because he needed to receive a code on her cell phone so she could create the account on Telegram.
And how did you and the defendant communicate with Joe Ryan on Telegram?
Play the role. That's how she described luring a man to his death. But then what happened on cross? The defense went nuclear on her credibility. They confronted her with her own words from jail before she took this plea.
Yes, that's
This is a letter that you wrote, it looks like on December 8th, 2023?
Yes,
And that would have been about 2 months after you were arrested on this charge?
yes,
Okay.
correct.
And calling your attention to the highlighted portion.
Did you ask something? I'm sorry, I was reading.
I was asking you to read it, yes. Have you read it?
Yeah, I read it.
Okay. And the yellow portion there, can you read that, please?
Yes. Well, now that you know, parentheses, I mean, they already knew, close parentheses, that I'm not going to cooperate with them. There is nothing I can do. So I don't know what they are going to use. I mean, everything they have and can. I don't know everything. I just have the feeling they might hold me here until my trial. It can take months, years. There are many theories of what had happened, set up by you, us, or I wasn't supposed to be there, and etc.
Okay. In this letter, which you wrote, it suggests that someone from the Commonwealth had been talking to you about cooperating against Brendan. Is that correct?
No, they never talked directly with me.
Okay. How would they communicate that to you?
Through my lawyer.
Your Honor, that assumes that are not in evidence at this point. Overruled.
How would they communicate that to you?
Through my lawyer.
Okay. And so this is 2 months after you were arrested. And were you given an opportunity to plead guilty and cooperate at that time?
Yes.
Okay. And what was it that they were offering you at that time?
At that point, my lawyer had said that they were offering, in exchange for my cooperation, they would offer me a misdemeanor and I would be released on time served.
Okay. And I guess, as I understand it, your lawyer communicated that to you, and then you made the decision as to that?
Yeah,
And what was your decision?
that I didn't want it.
Okay. So you rejected the misdemeanor offer
Yes,
based on what you knew?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
And then she said they wanted her to lie. Now she's telling their story to walk free. The defense argument here is a direct challenge to the jury. Which version of Juliana Peres Magalhães' story do you believe? Where does this monumental case go from here? The au pair's testimony's done. The trial's far from over. More forensic witnesses, digital experts, investigators that are expected to take the stand. But the core conflict is now crystal clear for the jury. A detailed, horrifying story of plot, murder, that's the allegation, versus the claim that the entire narrative was fabricated by a witness who traded her testimony for her freedom. Now, I want to do something different. I want to bring on somebody who is attached to this case, somebody who is inside this prosecution, someone who could give us an inside look at this case, context, the former prosecutor on this case. Now, before we do that, I do have to tell you something. Eric Klingen, the person we're about to bring on, he was the original lead prosecutor on this case, but he was cited for drinking in public last year. But I will tell you, this is an allegation that was later dropped. Okay, the charges were dropped, but he was dismissed from the case nonetheless. Now, let's bring him on. Okay, so now I have a special guest. I'm joined by Eric Klingen, former deputy Commonwealth attorney and the lead prosecutor on this case from Fairfax County, Virginia. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk about this now that it's really, really in the news. I think the one point of confusion people may have, at least I had when I initially saw this case, is what is the main theory here, right? Like, what is the motive?
Right. So the motive is that there are two people involved here, Brendan Banfield, Juliana Peres Magalhães. Effectively, she's the au pair. He takes a liking to her. She takes a liking to him. They start an affair in August of 2022. And as opposed to just like sexual dalliances, this thing got deeper and deeper until they came to a point where Brendan had decided he wanted to get rid of Christine, and a divorce was not an option. Sometimes that happens around here, and sometimes that happens in other places. Divorces can be expensive. Your dirty laundry gets aired out there. He decided that the way to deal with the problem is simply to find a way to eliminate her entirely. And so that is the idea. He gets to keep the child. He gets to keep the house, whatever, life insurance and whatever money might be out there. He wanted all of that and Juliana, and he thought he could get away with that.
And what about her? Like, she pled guilty, and I was curious why you think she pled guilty and what maybe her motivation was in all of this.
Well, I'll tell you, from the moment I started on this case, one of our main thoughts was we could get her to turn. And so we did multiple times, made overtures to her counsel to discuss possibly turning against Brendan, telling us the truth, telling us what really happened. Well, at the same time, she's on the phone with him. She's talking to him. She's talking to his family. And so she's got a lawyer who's telling her, look, even though you did shoot somebody, under the circumstances that the jury's going to hear, that's defense of others. And we got a shot at not guilty here. Maybe you're looking at a manslaughter. We have jury sentencing here in Virginia, which means that a jury might have taken pity on her if they did find her guilty of manslaughter. So that was what her defense attorney was talking about. And so she had confidence. Well, when we got the indictment in September, 2 months before her November trial in 2024, when we got that indictment, that changed everything for her. She was isolated. She was insecure. She was depressed. She didn't have that lifeline anymore. She didn't have anybody to give her confidence. And she also recognized that one of the two of them was possibly going to be able to cut a deal at that point, and the jig was up. She didn't want to find herself getting thrown under the bus. So effectively, she decided that enough was enough, and she wanted to come clean. There's one thing that has been constantly stated in various media outlets that I think it's really important on your show that we clarify this completely. I mean, I was there on the ground floor when the plea happened. Juliana does not have a plea agreement that says that at the end of this case, she's walking. There is no agreement as to her sentence. There is a recommendation that the Commonwealth has put forward, but that is not binding on the judge. So it's important to know that she is still facing up to 10 years under a manslaughter charge in Virginia, no matter what happens here. Now, obviously, if things go a certain way, there's going to be arguments and discussions with regards to that. But as things are right now, there is no agreed sentence in this case.
That's an important point. So in other words, whether the prosecution believes at the end of the day she testified truthfully or she didn't testify truthfully, there's no promise to her whatsoever.
Not at this stage, no. And that can change, and I don't know whether it will.
And now she's testifying in this very public trial. I know, Eric, you're limited in what you could say given your prior role, but have you been watching the trial? I mean, do you have some initial thoughts on what you're seeing so far?
Yeah, I can tell you this. They're putting forward a case. The Commonwealth is, the prosecutor's office. They're putting forward a case very quickly. I will tell you that I was surprised how fast they are moving, but I understand that there's been a lot of stipulations to a lot of pieces of evidence, so they didn't have to go through a lot of hoops that you would have to otherwise go through. So they're going through the motions, and they're going through those motions very quickly. That a little bit surprising to me. Also, there's other things that they could be emphasizing with regards to the evidence that they've put out there. I'm thinking they're just holding their arguments until closing arguments. Sometimes that's what you do, right? You just hang the pictures in the room and you don't describe them until you have to, until the jury then is thinking about it at closing arguments, then you tell them what each picture means. And that's when they can actually make the connection. And it's always better for a juror to make the connection as opposed to you telling them to make the connection. Because once they make the connection, they own it. And that's what you want them to do.
That's a really good point. When you're seeing this case progress and you're seeing the prosecution put forward the case and you anticipate what the defense is saying, I mean, what do you think, in your opinion, what are some of maybe the biggest challenges for the prosecution in this kind of case?
I actually think the biggest challenge right now for the prosecution is figuring out if Brendan is going to testify, and if he is, how to deal with him on cross. Because we don't know his version, right? I mean, we don't know. We know what we believe happened in that room. But at the same time, we have never seen him in terms of how emotional he might get. We have never seen him in terms of how can he make a connection with the jury. We don't know whether or not he is going to be able to fight back in cross-examination. Will he fight back? Or is it possible he's going to take a lower tone and be the meek and mild person that this jury could never believe would do something like this? It's very difficult when you're dealing with a case like this to predict whether the defendant is going to tell the story and then to prepare for it. And here's the worst part. You have to prepare for it regardless. Right. So you spend all your nights of trial, your days you're doing the trial, at night you're writing, your cross-examination, and then at the end he doesn't testify. Well, you know what? You were better to prepare for it. So that's the number one challenge I think they have. I think another challenge that they have is basically predicting what the defense is, even if he doesn't testify. What is the defense's explanation here? Is it really that Christine, this mother of this child in this house, in this family relationship, is the jury going to buy that she really was this like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type individual? And that's a real good question if that's what the defense is actually going to put forward. At the same time, the defense may, I think they alluded to this in their opening statement, and so did the Commonwealth to some degree, they may actually, avoid that and just go with, there's reasonable doubt, there's some problems with this investigation, here are the warts, let me show you what the problems are, they didn't prove their case. If you go that route, your client doesn't have to testify, but you're leaving it to the jury to decide.
Eric, you're making really good legal points on this for our viewers to listen to and understand as this trial progresses. But there is something to keep in mind, and sometimes it gets lost in these kinds of cases. It's the victim, right? As a prosecutor, did you learn a lot more about Christine? I mean, what did you learn about her? What should people know about her? Because this isn't just, the au pair trial and the sensational details. I mean, someone lost their life, and you wonder about Christine. What should we know about her?
From what I understand, and again, I'm not able to talk too much about evidence that's not in evidence in this case, but all indications based on photographs and based on the evidence that has been brought out so far, she was a good mother. She was a wife who appeared dutiful, and she took care of her family. She's a nurse. I mean, she's somebody who gives people health, gives people life. I mean, that takes a certain character just on its own, right? And any nurse. And so she was that. She was a beautiful person, and this makes the tragedy of it all even more so. And my heart goes out to the entire family, as it had from the day I first started working on this case.
And what about Joseph?
Well, Joe was also, believe it or not, a very easygoing individual. He is not the person that has been shown in certain photographs that I've seen that the media has used. There's a picture of him that does sort of encapsulate him in my view, my estimation best. There's that picture of him and he's got the dog and it's over his shoulder and the dog is, I think, licking his cheek. And I got to tell you, if that does not encapsulate Joe, I don't know what does. That's Joe Ryan right there. There's not much more I can say other than these two individuals unnecessarily and very horrifically got themselves into a situation, or at least found themselves in a situation that is, like I said, just tragic for both of them, given who they were.
Eric, before I wrap things up, look, I have to give you the floor here because I wanted you, if there was anything you want to share about the circumstances of you stepping away from this case, I wanted to give you the opportunity on this platform to talk about it.
Well, I appreciate that, Jesse. Look, at this point, what I can tell you is I didn't step away from this case. So I can tell you that I did not step away from this case. And I think as a lawyer yourself, the way I'll put it, I guess, is having been with this case for over 2 years, we've all known the old adage where the lawyer says, "The judge, I don't mind you trying my case, just don't lose it." And that's how I feel about how things are going right now. They're going well. They're doing a good job, and I hope they bring it home.
Eric Klingen, I appreciate that. I respect that, understand. Thank you for taking the time to shed a little bit more light on what you can in this very, this case that a lot of people are watching, a lot of people are invested in. So thank you. Always appreciate it.
Thank you, Jesse. Take care.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow me on X or Instagram. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.